So, if you have grown up anywhere near Western civilization, you already know the story we are looking at today.
Oh, absolutely. It is basically baked into the culture.
Right. You have the pristine garden, the forbidden tree, the whispering snake, and that rebellious bite of the fruit.
The classic Sunday school narrative.
Exactly. It has been universally framed for, over 2,000 years as the ultimate moral failure, the foundation of original sin.
A catastrophic rebellion that just breaks the whole universe.
Yeah, that is the lens we all inherited. But today we are taking a deep dive into the actual source material, and I want to start by throwing out a fact that completely shatters that framing.
Great on me.
In the entire third chapter of Genesis, the Hebrew word for sin, which is chatat, does not appear a single time.
It is completely absent. And, when you are dealing with ancient, highly compressed texts, an omission of that magnitude is not an accident.
It is structural, right?
Exactly. It is a deliberate signal from the author. It is telling the reader that the lens you were using to view the story is fundamentally flawed.
I mean, that just blew my mind when I first read the sources, because we absorbed this legalistic framing so early on.
Right. The idea of a transactional crime.
Yeah, God gives a command, the humans break the command, and so this angry deity hands out punishments.
But if the text itself refuses to use the vocabulary of sin or transgression in its most critical moment, we really have to rethink what this text actually is.
What is the mission here? If it is not a legal document about a crime, what are we actually looking at?
Well, the sources demand that we stop reading it as a moralistic fable. We need to start reading it as a mechanistic manual
A manual for what, exactly?
for human cognitive evolution. What we're looking at in Genesis 3 is a highly sophisticated neurological account of a massive shift.
Like a map of the mind.
Right. It is a phenomenological map of the exact moment the human brain split into two distinct layers of operation.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand that split, we really have to look at the architecture of the ancient Hebrew language itself, right?
We do, because you cannot read ancient Hebrew the way you read modern English.
Yeah, modern English is, it's very expansive. Like, we just invent new words every single day to describe new things.
But ancient Hebrew does not work like that at all. It does not waste syllables. It is built on a very rigid system of three-letter roots.
So it compresses these massive philosophical arguments into, like, phonetic mirrors.
Exactly. Words that share a structural root are intrinsically philosophically linked, even if their surface definitions seem totally unrelated.
The language literally forces you to look at the geometry of the text.
Right. And the geometry of the transition between Genesis 2 and Genesis 3 is just stunning once you see it.
Oh, it really is. Because at the end of chapter 2, the text describes the humans in their natural state. It says they were naked and they were not ashamed.
And then immediately, chapter 3 introduces the catalyst. It says, now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field.
And the Hebrew word used there for cunning is aram.
Right, Aram. And then, the very moment the humans eat the fruit and their eyes are opened, the text says they saw that they were naked.
Or exposed.
Yeah, exposed. And the word for naked in that specific sentence is aramum.
Arum.
Yes, both aram and aramum are constructed from the exact same triconsonantal reed.
Ayin, resh, mem.
Exactly. It is a deliberate structural mirror.
So the text introduces the aram serpent, the humans eat the fruit, and instantly they become aramim. That completely alters what eating the fruit actually represents.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't about acquiring, factual trivia. The tree of knowledge didn't dispense encyclopedic facts.
To eat from the tree was to inherit the aram paradigm.
It was the acquisition of an operating system.
So let's define that operating system. What does aram or cunning actually require from a cognitive standpoint?
Well, it implies a strategic, reflective consciousness. A cunning creature has the ability to create representations and, maneuver information.
It can recognize the gap between internal reality and external representation.
Precisely. That gap is what we call the meta layer.
Right. I mean, think about a dog. A dog cannot lie. If a dog is happy, it wags its tail. If it is angry, it growls.
There is no filter.
Right. But a cunning creature, an aram creature, has this private inner world. It can feel absolute terror but project total confidence.
It can maneuver its outward presentation to achieve a strategic goal.
Now, compare that aram state to the human's condition just moments prior. The text says they were naked and they were not ashamed.
Which is not just about a lack of clothing. It is a profound description of pure immediacy.
Meaning there is zero distance between their subjective experience and the objective reality.
Exactly.
Hmm.
In a state of pure immediacy, what you see is what there is. You are entirely embedded in the present moment.
There is no meta layer filtering your existence, no internal monologue evaluating your performance.
You just are.
So the bite of the fruit represents this catastrophic evolutionary leap into reflective consciousness. Suddenly, the human brain can step outside of itself.
And view itself as an object. Yes.
For the very first time, a creature can ask, how do I look to others? What is the gap between my internal self and my external presentation?
It really is the birth of the self as a concept.
I think the most relatable way to understand this is to, well, imagine living your entire life just looking out through your own eyes. You are just absorbing the world.
Just experiencing it.
Yeah. And then, one day, someone hands you a smartphone and turns on the front-facing camera for the exact first time.
Oh, wow. That is a jarring shift.
Right. You are no longer just experiencing the room, you are watching yourself experience the room.
And the immediate psychological burden of that is immense.
It really is. You start adjusting your posture, you check your hair, you worry about the lighting. The camera creates the burden of self-representation.
That analogy captures the exact cognitive friction of the meta layer. The front-facing camera of the human mind has been permanently activated.
And with that activation comes the immediate, inescapable capacity for self-evaluation.
Yes.
But, and here's where I want to push back a little based on the sources, if this cognitive tool is just a neutral piece of mental software, why does it instantly produce terror?
That is a great question.
I mean, if you hand someone a front-facing camera, they might just as easily look at it and think, oh, hey, I look great today.
Sure they could.
So why does the Aaron paradigm instantly trigger this terrifying monster of shame? Why is the very first human reaction to self-awareness this overwhelming desire to hide?
That is the pivotal causal question right there.
Yeah.
And to understand why a neutral cognitive tool produced shame, we have to look at the biological hardware.
The hardware that this new software was running on.
Exactly. We have to move from ancient linguistic analysis to the neuroscience of human impulse.
Okay, let's go there.
Specifically, we need to examine the work of Benjamin Libet in the 1980s.
Oh, Libet's EEG experiments. Those are arguably some of the most unsettling experiments in modern neuroscience.
They really profoundly disrupted our understanding of free will. So Libet brought participants into a lab, right? He hooked them up to EEG machines to monitor their brain waves and gave them a very simple instruction. Just flick your wrist whenever you feel the urge to do so.
Just a spontaneous, voluntary action.
Right. And while they did this, they watched a specialized clock. They were asked to note the exact millisecond they became consciously aware of their decision to act.
Which seems straightforward. You would assume the timeline goes, I consciously decide to flick my wrist, my brain sends the signal, and then my wrist moves.
That is the intuitive model of human agency. We all feel like that is how it works.
But the EEG data revealed a completely different sequence, didn't it?
It did. Libet found that a readiness potential, this buildup of neurological activity in the motor area of the brain, was firing roughly 500 milliseconds before the participant was consciously aware of their decision.
Wait, really? Half a second before?
Half a second before they even knew they wanted to move.
So the brain was initiating the action, spooling up the engine, preparing to execute a movement, while the conscious self was still entirely oblivious.
Yes, which triggered a massive philosophical panic in the scientific community.
Because it suggested that our consciousness is just a passenger, like a delayed observer watching a movie that our biology has already directed.
It implied that we are essentially just meat robots, executing pre-programmed biological commands.
But thankfully, Libet's data held a secondary discovery that kind of saves us from total neurological determinism.
Right, he found a specific neurological window, a gap of roughly 200 milliseconds between the moment the conscious mind finally becomes aware of the urge and the moment the muscle actually moves.
And that is the veto window.
The veto window. In those 200 milliseconds, the conscious brain has the power to intervene.
So the prefrontal cortex can send an inhibitory signal to suppress the action. We might not generate the initial impulse, but we can stop it.
Exactly. We don't have free will in the classical sense. We have free won't.
Free won't. I love that framing. Our biology is an engine of impulse, but our conscious awareness functions as the brake.
Now, if we take Libet's framework and overlay it directly onto the transition in Genesis 3, the mechanics of the fall become incredibly clear.
Right, so the eyes are open, the front-facing camera turns on, they look at themselves and realize they are aramim, they are exposed.
And we have to ask how the deeper, older parts of the primate brain, what Daniel Kahneman calls System 1, interprets that exposure.
System 1 being our fast, automatic, intuitive threat detection architecture.
Exactly. It doesn't philosophize. To a biological organism operating on survival instincts, exposure equals vulnerability.
And vulnerability equals an imminent threat to survival.
So the amygdala fires. The readiness potential spikes. System 1 detects exposure and instantly generates a massive automatic impulse of self-preservation.
It triggers the biological urge to eliminate the vulnerability.
That is the path of least resistance. The shame they experience isn't a moral judgment from above.
It is a biological panic response from within.
Yes. And what is the automatic default program for that kind of panic? Concealment. Hide the vulnerability. Fabricate a barrier.
Which is why the text says they immediately sew fig leaves together and hide themselves among the trees.
The biological impulse fires, and they execute the action.
Which means the true tragedy of this narrative, the actual failure, is not the acquisition of the tool itself.
Right, the self-representation was neutral.
The failure is strictly located in what happened during the 200 milliseconds after the tool was activated.
What's fascinating here is that the human mind generated a negative evaluation of its own neutral state and allowed that evaluation to run wild without applying the veto.
They failed to use System 2, the slower, conscious, rational part of the brain. They failed to press the brake.
They completely missed the veto window.
Instead of standing in their truth, looking at their vulnerability, and consciously deciding, yes, I am exposed, but I am safe, they just surrendered to the machinery of concealment.
They allowed an internal biological impulse to translate directly into external action. There was no conscious mediation.
You know, this maps so perfectly onto our daily psychological experience. Like, think about making a severe error at work.
Oh, that is a great example.
Right. Your manager calls you out in front of a group. In that split second, your System 1 perceives a massive social exposure.
Which it equates to a survival threat.
Exactly. The readiness potential fires. You feel a burning, almost physical urge to deflect, to lie, or to blame a coworker.
That impulse is your brain aggressively sowing a fig leaf.
Yes. And it takes an immense, exhausting act of conscious will, like a deliberate activation of the prefrontal cortex, to hit the brake in those 200 milliseconds.
To stop your mouth from forming the lie.
And to just say, you know what, I take responsibility.
But in Eden, they did not hit the brake. They fabricated a representation of themselves to cover their reality.
They basically weaponized the Aram paradigm against themselves.
And because they failed to veto that internal impulse, the cognitive system is now fundamentally misaligned.
They are trapped in their own meta layer, hiding from themselves and from reality.
Which means the system cannot correct itself.
Yeah.
An external force has to enter the environment to attempt a recalibration.
And this brings us to the entrance of the sovereign into the garden, which honestly might be the most misread sequence in all of Western literature.
We really have to completely discard the traditional imagery here.
Yeah, the cultural assumption is that God enters the garden as this angry celestial dictator, stomping through the bushes, hunting down his disobedient subjects.
Ready to deliver a guilty verdict.
Exactly. But if you actually read the syntax of the interaction, the sovereign's behavior is bizarrely restrained.
It is an entirely Socratic intervention. The sovereign does not issue decrees or shout accusations.
He interacts exclusively through questions. Where are you? Who told you that you were naked? Did you eat of the tree?
Which makes you ask, why is the omniscient ruler of the universe playing detective?
Right. The premise of omniscience means he already possesses the data. He knows exactly which tree they are hiding behind.
He knows the biochemical state of their brains. He knows they ate the fruit.
So the questions are not information-gathering tools for a prosecution.
No, the questions are a therapeutic mechanism. The sovereign is deploying the Socratic mirror.
He is attempting to induce self-realization?
Yes, by forcing the conscious mind to articulate its own assumptions. I mean, consider the specific phrasing of the central question.
Who told you that you were naked?
Exactly. He is pointing directly to the origin of their evaluation.
Because the answer to who told you is, well, nobody.
Right. The sovereign did not declare their nakedness to be a flaw.
And the serpent didn't tell them it was shameful either.
By asking who told you, the sovereign is highlighting the fact that the humans imported this negative judgment entirely on their own.
They looked at their neutral, natural state, generated a biological panic response, attached a negative value to it, and then treated that self-generated illusion as objective truth.
The sovereign is trying to show them that the prison they are in is locked from the inside.
The interrogation isn't a prosecution, it's a rescue attempt.
It is the second veto window.
Oh, wow. He is dragging them back into the 200 millisecond window they just missed.
He is pausing the timeline, giving them a retrospective opportunity to engage their prefrontal cortex.
He is essentially saying, observe your own behavior. You are hiding. Why? Stop the machinery. Strip away the fig leaves. Take conscious ownership of your state.
He is offering them the chance to consciously override their System 1 panic. He is attempting to teach them how to use the Aram tool without being enslaved by it.
But as the text demonstrates, System 1 is incredibly resilient.
It doubles down.
It really does. The moment the sovereign applies Socratic pressure, the ego's defensive mechanisms deploy with lethal efficiency.
They fail the second chance completely.
Miserably. When the sovereign asks Adam if he ate the fruit, Adam refuses to say, hey, I made a choice. He immediately blame shifts.
Right. He says, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit and I ate.
And notice the sophisticated deflection in that phrasing. He doesn't merely throw Eve under the bus.
No, he subtly indicts the sovereign.
The woman whom you gave to be with me. Adam is framing himself as a passive victim of a faulty system.
And pointing out that the sovereign is the architect of that system.
It is such a human reaction, and Eve deploys the exact same defensive algorithm.
When questioned, she says, the serpent deceived me and I ate.
Neither of them will own the action.
This is the ultimate refusal of agency. And it is this specific refusal, not the bite of the fruit itself, that forces the expulsion from the garden.
Because the system of reflective consciousness fundamentally requires that a conscious being bear the weight of its own choices.
Exactly. If you possess the Aram paradigm, but you claim to be a passive victim of external forces, you are rejecting your own autonomy.
Like if you say you are just a leaf blown by the wind, controlled by your partner or the serpent or your environment.
You cannot possess the knowledge and simultaneously claim the immunity of a helpless animal. You have to pick an operating system.
Because they reject their own agency, they cannot remain in the state of grace.
But before we look at the mechanics of that expulsion, our sources raise a deeply provocative theory regarding the nature of the serpent and the sovereign.
Yes, this part is fascinating. It is a framework that dismantles thousands of years of dualistic theology.
The idea of a cosmic war between absolute good and absolute evil.
What if the serpent and the sovereign are not enemies? What if they are two distinct faces of the exact same evolutionary process?
It is a radical thought. But if we look closely at the sequence of events, the serpent provides the necessary neutral tool.
He initiates the cognitive leap by introducing the Aram paradigm, the split between inner reality and outer representation.
And the moment the humans misuse that tool, trapping themselves in biological panic and shame, the sovereign immediately steps in.
With Socratic questions to integrate the leap.
It acts as a unified developmental mechanism. First, the introduction of the tool, followed immediately by the rescue manual instructing how to wield it.
The serpent forces the evolution, and the sovereign provides the framework to survive it.
The tragedy of the narrative isn't that the serpent was inherently evil.
The tragedy is that humanity retained the tool but discarded the manual.
They chose the cognitive upgrade, but rejected the responsibility it required.
And because they refuse the rescue manual, the narrative must resolve the new phenomenological reality they have created for themselves.
Which leads directly into the infamous curses at the end of Genesis 3.
Right. And again, the linguistic mechanics of the ancient Hebrew completely rewrite our understanding of these passages.
Traditionally, this section is read as God petulantly handing out targeted, vindictive punishments.
Yeah, the humans disobeyed. So God decides farming will now be grueling, childbirth will be agonizing, and snakes will lose their legs.
It reads like a petty dictator issuing arbitrary magical hexes.
It certainly reads that way in English translation. But if we analyze the specific Hebrew grammar, a vastly different mechanism emerges.
The Hebrew word used repeatedly in this section, which is usually translated as cursed, is arur.
Arur.
Grammatically, arur is a passive participle. It does not carry the active prescriptive weight of I hereby curse you.
So what does it actually translate to?
It translates more accurately to you are in a state of being cursed. It is a description of causality, not a magical imposition.
It is revealing a logical conclusion based entirely on their new altered internal state.
Exactly. It is descriptive, not prescriptive. It's an observation of natural consequences.
Let's look at how this descriptive causality applies to the serpent. The text states the serpent is Arur, condemned to go upon its belly and eat dust.
If we view this through the cognitive lens we've established, this is not about a literal reptile losing its legs.
It is a description of the bounded, constrained reality of the cognitive ego.
The Aram paradigm itself is bound to the dirt.
Yes. Once you are trapped in the horizontal world of strategic representation, you are bound to it.
Once your entire existence is consumed by managing your image, maneuvering information, and living exclusively within the meta layer, you are intrinsically bound to the dirt of your own machinations.
You are stuck crawling on the ground of your own ego, entirely cut off from a higher, unified state of being.
You are consumed by the friction of your own self-awareness.
Which is, frankly, a terrifyingly accurate description of modern anxiety.
It really is. And this descriptive framework perfectly translates to the consequence laid out for the woman as well.
The text says her pain in childbearing will be multiplied. But if we view this descriptively, we have to look at the nature of pain before the fruit.
Before they possessed Dot, before they had reflective consciousness, physical pain was merely a localized sensation.
Right. An animal experiences profound physical pain, but an animal does not experience existential suffering.
A primate giving birth feels the somatic intensity, but it does not project its mind into the future to worry about the pain yet to come.
Nor does it ruminate on the pain of the past.
But once the meta layer of consciousness is activated, the human mind gains the capacity to anticipate the future.
To calculate risk, to deeply contemplate mortality.
Suddenly, the act of childbirth is no longer just a biological event.
It is loaded with the excruciating existential dread of bringing a fragile mortal life into a dangerous, unpredictable, and decaying world.
The physical pain didn't necessarily increase. The pain became conscious.
The biological sensation was overlaid with existential suffering.
God didn't magically turn up the pain dial on human biology. The human mind simply became aware of the stakes.
And we see the exact same linguistic proof when we look at the consequence given to the man.
The text says, "For dust you are, and to dust you shall return."
The traditional reading treats this as a divine death sentence, as if humans were physically immortal prior to the bite.
But look at the Hebrew word that begins that sentence. It is ki.
Ki, which means because.
Because dust you are. The sovereign is not sentencing the man to death. The sovereign is pointing out a physical reality.
Their mortality was always a biological fact. They were terrestrial creatures made of decaying physical matter.
But before the fruit, they didn't know it. They lived in pure immediacy.
A dog doesn't know it's going to die. It just lives until it doesn't.
Precisely. The sovereign isn't condemning them to die as a punishment. He is explaining that now, because they possess Dot, because they can project their consciousness linearly into the future, they are burdened with the constant awareness of it.
This crushing awareness of their own impermanence, they are cursed to know that they are decaying.
It is the curse of foresight. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the punishment is the awareness itself.
The consequence is baked directly into the reflective consciousness they actively chose to utilize.
Which means the expulsion from the garden isn't a bouncer throwing rule breakers out of a nightclub.
The expulsion is the phenomenological reality of living with this new, irreversible awareness.
You physically cannot live in a state of pure, naive immediacy once you possess the meta layer.
The garden is closed because your mind has changed. You have expelled yourself.
The Garden of Eden is not a geographical location you can be locked out of. It is a psychological state of mind.
And once the front-facing camera is turned on, you cannot unsee the lens.
You really can't. Which brings all of these ancient linguistic mechanics directly into the present reality for the listener.
Because the fall isn't some historical event that happened thousands of years ago to two naive ancestors. It is a continuous, active psychological process.
The Garden of Eden is a state of mind that you inhabit, lose, and navigate every single day.
It is the defining biological and psychological reality of every human being operating with the prefrontal cortex.
Every single time you feel a surge of vulnerability.
Every time your System 1 detects exposure and fires its automatic biological impulse to sow a fig leaf.
Whether that means hiding from a difficult conversation.
Or lying to your partner to avoid conflict.
Shifting the blame to a coworker.
Or even projecting a heavily curated image on social media that masks your actual reality.
In that exact moment, you are standing right in front of the tree of knowledge.
And the neurological mechanics of your mind dictate that in that specific moment, you have roughly 200 milliseconds.
You have the daily veto.
The veto window is in your hands. You can let the biological machinery run its automatic course.
You can surrender to the path of least resistance, hide in the bushes, and blame the world for your nakedness.
Or you can use your veto. You can deliberately engage your conscious mind, press the brake on your own impulses, and step out from behind the tree.
Accept your vulnerability and say, I am here, I am exposed. and I take full responsibility for my reality.
It's all right there in those 200 milliseconds.